Voters head to the polls again next year, and conventional wisdom says the news will be bad for President Joe Biden's Democratic Party. How bad? It's a topic Ray Nothstine explores in his latest column at CarolinaJournal.com. Ray is Carolina Journal's opinion editor. Ray, you basically start this with a statement from South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who's comparing this 2022 election to a famous election from our recent past.
Right, 1994, also known as the Republican Revolution, was just a giant sweep aside of power from the Democrats. They had held the U.S. House of Representatives since the 1950s. I think it was like 54 or 55 was the last time Republicans had held the House of Representatives. They had held the Senate a little bit. But Republicans were, at least from a legislative perspective, were pretty much out of sight, out of mind for most of that time. And the 94 election swept in, and you had the speaker, Tom Foley from Washington State, he was the first speaker to lose since the Civil War. And so that was a big thing. Dan Rostenkowski, who older viewers might remember, he was the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. He lost his bid for re-election. So it was just this giant sweep aside of power. And, of course, Graham's coming in now and probably adding some spin that it's going to be like 1994. There are a lot of differences, which I try to bring out in the column.
Yeah, you in fact say that this could be true, the prediction of another 1994 if inflation and other issues overwhelm the Democrats, but you also point to some big differences.
Right, and one of the things, there are a few kind of similarities in terms of issues. Crime was a big factor in 1994. Of course, Biden was a big supporter of the crime bill that became, kind of the stalwart anti-position by some in Washington now. But it had a lot of support from Republicans and Democrats, and it was pretty effective when it at least came to getting violent criminals off the street. So there's some similarities on the issues. There's a few differences, of course. Inflation, interest rates. In 1994, the economy was strong, but it was like 8.91% or something. And those who had a mortgage back then will notice the differences from today. But I think it's exactly right. I mean, Biden is going to have issues, and proverbially, there's just a lot of similarities, but there's some differences too. And one of the big differences is on the Senate side, Republicans have to defend a lot more seats. They have to defend like 20 seats compared to 13 for Democrats. So you do see quite a bit of differences. And one of the main differences that I kind of draw out in the column is that it really comes down to just a different electoral and congressional district maps. You have basically just a few, maybe 24 at the most, but swing districts in suburban America. Now with the urban-rural divide, it is just a completely different kind of map when you're dealing with Congress now, and you have much more red-blue America kind of split.
You also remind us that Republicans have to secure a net gain of 5 seats to pick up control of the U.S. House, and to get 1 seat to get control again of the U.S. Senate. I thought another interesting piece of your column was we've been talking about relatively recent U.S. political history, but you also have a note from the early days of American political history about elections and how hard they are to predict.
Right. I mean, one of the most contentious elections, of course, is Thomas Jefferson, John Adams. Lots of accusations, lots of nastiness for anybody who thinks that politics has gotten nastier. Even at the very early part of our republic, it was pretty nasty. There was sexual allegations. There were allegations of just laziness, all kinds of things. There's all kinds of great books on the early presidential election. Yeah, atheism, deism, anti-Christian rhetoric. So none of this stuff in politics is new. And Adams, he didn't like running for office, but he saw it as an important endeavor as well. But it was something he dreaded. And I think the quote I use is just kind of a reminder, too, that elections aren't going to solve everything. And I think we have to remember that as voters, as citizens, as residents of North Carolina, that even if we change power, it doesn't necessarily solve a lot of the problems. We see that in D.C. And I think that's one of the reasons we won't have a 94 again, because there's a relative, very recent memory of Republicans controlling Congress, and there was a lot of dysfunction. So I think the partisan split is wider in the sense that people have kind of entrenched and hunkered down in who they're going to support.
Well, it's a very interesting topic, and of course one that will be coming to the fore as we get closer and closer to the next year's election. If you'd like to learn more, you can log on to CarolinaJournal.com and find the column with the headline, "Will 2022 midterms be 1994-like tidal wave? That is the question asked in the headline from the column by Ray Nothstine, opinion editor at Carolina Journal. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.